The DCEU is dead. Long live the DCU. At least that's what they're hoping for, but I'm not convinced. While you can credibly say that the Marvel movie universe is having some problems now too, DC has had problems every step of the way, never really getting their shared cohesive universe right, probably because it was never cohesive to begin with, but I want to look back at the DC Extended Universe and show you why I believe it failed, and why the new reboot is in just as much trouble. Now, the costumes being comic accurate or not isn't a total death knell, but there's a reason that people were so excited for Wolverine's iconic blue and yellow in the new Deadpool movie, so I won't say that that's the main reason that it failed, because the Flash's suit was awful, but at the same time they had Aquaman in his classic orange and green, riding a giant seahorse no less, like it was ripped straight from the Silver Age, and that made $1 billion, so... No, my concern for why DC is having so much trouble is because they refuse to start their stories at the beginning. Way back in the day, you had Superman the movie start with Kal-El's origins, and that made sense. And then they actually did the same thing again in Man of Steel, which did surprise me, but I feel like that was a decent start. However, that was 1 year after the Avengers had already come out, so they felt like they had to play catch-up and rush to meet the competition. However, superhero origins are more than just about how they got their powers. It's also about what character traits make them a hero. What are the beliefs that make Clark Kent decide to help people? We got to see them multiple times, as well as this new approach in the Man of Steel universe, to flesh out their new takes on his supporting cast and staples such as the Fortress of Solitude. So recontextualizing the familiar aspects is a worthwhile excuse for starting over. The problem is that they've been doubling or tripling down on the characters that we've already seen, while severely jumping the gun for icons that have never appeared on the silver screen before. It's not that they did a bad job with Wonder Woman. Her movie was put together quite well with a solid backstory and excellent costume, but why did we have it come out after we had already met her? Wouldn't it have been better to see her film first instead of inserting her into the middle of the fray? You know, like the Avengers movies did? But the Avengers is the exact problem here, because by the time Batman v Superman came out, Marvel was already on Phase 3. So if DC didn't play catch-up, they'd be leaving billions of dollars on the table, right? Well, unfortunately, this zeal was in fact their undoing, as the same reason Aquaman didn't get his movie until after Justice League, despite it also functioning as an origin story of sorts. And don't even get me started on Cyborg and the Flash, I'll get there, believe me. But maybe worst of all was killing Superman in his second movie here. However, I would like to look at maybe the best example of this problem in the universe, Harley Quinn. A fan favorite pretty much ever since her debut in Batman the Animated Series, Harley Quinn has been a longtime love interest for the Joker, only more recently in the comics getting to step out on her own. But if you watch the movies, you would never know this. They blitzed through their entire on-screen romance with a montage and instantly made her a strong, independent woman. Now, obviously, you can make that work on screen, see Wonder Woman, but that's not Harley Quinn's character. I mean, it might be now, but you're intentionally skipping over all of the growth that it would take for her to get there. Instead of hearing about how bad or abusive the Joker could be, why don't you show us? I mean, I guess it's good that they didn't do it that way, so we didn't have to see Jared Leto's Joker more than we had to, but people are fans of Harley Quinn for a reason, and fast-forwarding through all of the development that could make her sympathetic or even inspirational is evaporated when you decide to immediately throw her into hanging out with Black Canary and the Huntress instead of, you know, being a villain against one of the world's most recognizable heroes beyond a cameo in a Suicide Squad project. And that's the thing. You're not only depriving fans of a live-action portrayal of the character that they've been dreaming of, never having been in a movie before in the history of mankind, but for anyone not familiar with the character, you're just going to make them confused when you throw them into the middle of their progression, making newcomers think, did I miss something here? And the answer is yes, but you wouldn't know it in the way that the producers handle things. Then there's The Flash, and oh boy is this a tangled mess. I'm not even gonna mention the crazy actor that plays Barry Allen, but the way the character was treated was so baffling. They introduced him in Justice League only to have minor cameos for the next 6 years, not to have his own film until the universe was already confirmed to be dead. Real-world missteps aside, there is no reason that the story for his first solo film ever should be Flashpoint. The reason that Flashpoint was such an interesting comic idea was because it drastically shook up the norm. And take a look at how much a small change could have a big impact. The issue there is that we don't know what this Barry Allen's norm is. We've never seen his everyday life at home, at work, or with his friends. He barely even knows this Iris. Is he having a hard time keeping his secret identity from her? We'll never know because they decided to reboot the entire universe in his first ever outing. Nobody even wanted to try to check out Captain Cold or Mirror Master or rogues besides Captain Boomerang? Not even the Reverse Flash? I guess not. We'll just come up with our own as a sort of copy of this Barry somehow. I don't know, I didn't even see it. There could have been some other prominent Flash arc that they could have tried before jumping right to something that only works after years of build-up when they knew that they didn't have that foundation. Now, I will say that the one time moving too fast would have suited them, they foolishly showed restraint, giving Shazam 2 whole movies and Black Adam his own film, yet never having them meet whatsoever. How they ever managed to do that after making the same rushed Justice League movie twice is truly mind-blowing. That's not to say that Shazam is bad. I think they handled that character maybe second best after Wonder Woman, since they took one logical step after the next, with a solid origin that introduced the character and opened up the world without immediately jumping the gun. But I do wish that they could have made all of that effort mean something by actually having these rivals meet, since, again, they elected to make Black Adam more of an anti-hero than an outright villain. I know that's mostly because of The Rock's ego, but it once again made it harder for newcomers to understand not only how these characters are even different, but what exactly is this Justice Society that they're talking about, and is it different from the League? Sure, it was nice to see Hawkman and Dr. Fate, but I really would have liked to see some of that friendship that they had built up before now, and spoiler alert, I really would have liked for Dr. Fate not to die in the first movie he ever appeared in. Talk about rushing to the end of your story, I don't think you could possibly get any closer to the end than the day you die, and instead of treating Hawkman and his wonderful actor as a side character to what should be a villain of the story, maybe they could have at least clued us in on which version of his backstory we're supposed to be rolling with, or is it a mixture of both? But again, general audiences will either be confused by this throwing everything at the wall approach, or they'll just stop caring, at which point they'll say, I guess these movies just aren't for me. Which is ironic because they seem to not really be for the hardcore fans either. I mean, the hardcore fans will be able to catch up on the current story, but don't you think they would care to see any of their favorite parts that you randomly skipped over? And that's my main concern for this quote-unquote new cinematic universe for DC that James Gunn is planning. Starting out with Superman again is fine, I get that. But then the next things on the schedule are The Authority and Swamp Thing? Are we seriously going to see a second-tier villain squad before ever seeing the Legion of Doom? Are they really more iconic Superman villains than Brainiac, who has never had an on-screen film appearance? Is Swamp Thing really so important that we need to get him before the flippin' Martian Manhunter? The hero that Superman called the strongest being on the planet? Founding member of the Justice League doesn't get to have his own movie before some grumpy moss? I can appreciate that Hawkgirl is supposed to have a decent role in this universe, but why are we going with Guy Gardner as the Green Lantern? I know that people look down on that original film, but GL set out the entirety of the DCEU, so I think it's time for Hal Jordan to get a redemption here. But that's not even the worst of it. Guy Gardner isn't even the second Green Lantern, he's the third after John Stewart. And technically the fourth, with Alan Scott being the first one in the Golden Age, but he wasn't a part of the Corps. John Stewart is a beloved character and has a unique personality all his own, long setting himself apart from Hal, and is in fact many people's favorite or definitive version of the Green Lantern hero. So if we must jump over Hal in this universe, is there no way that John could have made his theatrical debut before Guy Gardner? Because if they ever do decide to bring in John Stewart, they'll have to retcon their own brand new work, saying, well, yeah, he was technically the Green Lantern before me. I'm surprised they didn't just jump straight to Kyle at this point. And of course, this all goes double for Robin. The Boy Wonder has been portrayed on screen before, so that's good. However, even the uninitiated will know that there are multiple Robins over the years, and for some reason, James Gunn has decided that Damian Wayne is the best one to start this universe. I can handle not having Dick Grayson in the role, and frankly, it would be nice to see Nightwing as a full hero in a movie as well, but once again, Damian is much further down the list. Jason Todd was next, and we all know what happened to him, leading to him becoming the Red Hood. So now, not only will you have to immediately backtrack to explain a relationship long ago between Batman and the daughter of one of his greatest supervillains, instead of, say, showing us that happening over a number of years, if they want the Red Hood in any of these films, they'll have to go on a prolonged flashback explanation for something that just could have been its own movie in the first place. Please don't make Jason Todd's first movie an afterthought to Batman's bratty kid. And of course, poor Tim Drake's got no shot at this point. The third Robin has been nearly as beloved and influential as the first, but he's never even come close to appearing in a live-action film. And apparently he never will, since it's not like the Red Robin has had nearly the same impact, so I highly doubt they'll leave whatever rich story they think they've got in mind for Damian just to clue us in on what Batman's former sidekicks are doing. So is it really worth skipping over 3 or even 4 great potential wells of stories just to rush to the end of a tale for some cheap drama, when you're probably gonna reboot the entire franchise in 10 years anyway? It's like they learned nothing from killing off the original 2 Blue Beetles in his first ever film. Honestly, I'm not that interested in seeing any of these new slate of DC movies because, and I hope I'm wrong here, as far as I can tell, they have already zoomed past most of the parts of the DC universe that I love, which is gonna leave many fans hungry for wanting something more, with no interest in providing it anytime soon.